frustrated with new entrepreneurs who know that they need a brand and know that they need a website, and then they go out and they spend several $1,000s on having a designer do it for them, only 6 months later to realize that that's not really the direction that they wanted to go in, and now they need to redo the whole thing or hire another designer, and you're just essentially throwing money away by hiring a designer and a brand strategist and a web designer right out of the gate. I think that everybody, when just starting out, really needs to go through this DIY process, because that's how you're going to figure out your true, what you really want to be doing. And it's just going to kind of take you through that whole clarity piece that you might not get if you just go out and hire somebody to do it for you. Serving more people. So I want people to be empowered to be able to do it themselves. I don't want people wasting their money, throwing their money away, hiring designers when they're not quite ready for that. And, there's only, again, so many hours in the day and so many people that I can help on one-to-one basis. So
I think it's interesting just tapping into what you said there, a lot of it, and it mirrors very much for me with some of the financial work that I do with people, that confusion and clarity piece. It's amazing how often there is the pre-work to do and how much pre-work people need to do before, as you say, getting to the fun creation bit in your world. But for me, again, a lot of it is about people facing up to the fact that actually, I don't really know what these number things mean. And if I'm going to scale and grow and be what I would call a real CEO in my business, I have to get to a point where I'm prepared to take some steps to understand it. And one of my biggest frustrations, which very much echoes some of the things that you've just said, is the idea that people don't ask for the help that they actually need at a point in time, because they think that the answer to the question is, well, I've got to ask my accountant, and my accountant's going to charge me a fortune. So they just carry on not asking, and they carry on probably making the same mistakes, and it never gets any better. And I think that these sorts of things, and that's very much one of the ideas that I had in the background thinking about membership group for myself, was about how do you provide access to a resource that people are prepared to engage with. They're not frightened of turning up to. They know they can ask a question one day, not ask a question for 10 days, come back and ask another one, without there being this perennial fear about either getting something right, getting it wrong, being stupid, not being stupid, feeling informed, not being informed, all those things. And I think there's a tremendous amount that we can do to help people in that way through things like membership groups, to help people over these initial stages with some of these things in a very open way. So, I think fabulous that's being opened up, that you are coaching people through that. And I'm presuming that is also helping you increase your own authority and standing as well, from a mentor point of view as well, in terms of how people develop as they go forward with you as well.
Yeah. But going back to what you were just saying, like people not doing anything because they don't think they can afford to hire their accountant to do it, so they just keep doing it wrong. And that's the same thing with branding. Like they can't afford the multi-$1,000 designer, so they just try to do it themselves, but without like a mentor guiding them through the branding process, like legitimately how you're supposed to do the branding. They're just fumbling their way through it, doing it however they think they're supposed to do it. And, if you're not a designer, you shouldn't necessarily know how to do it. So you do it wrong, and then you end up, it ends up just kind of looking like a train wreck at the end. Whereas if you go through the membership, which is very affordable, very, I think, low cost, affordable. And then you've got somebody in your corner who you can always ask those questions. You've got step-by-step, resources, guides, tutorials, lessons, and it all goes like very simply, step by step. And, that way you're ensuring that a little bit of money spent, you're getting it right the first time, and you're not going to end up at the end of the road completely confused and looking at like a million different brands that were all just kind of patched together, which is what
you've just taken in your second intake, I think, haven't you, into your membership program? How did you how was the second time around different? What things did you learn from that first induction process with all of the pre-work, trying to get the things set up in the first place, to then running again to take that next group of people in?
Yeah. So the second time I did it, I actually did it while I was on vacation.
Nice. Or maybe not nice doing it on holiday. Yeah. But.
Yeah, no, I did it that way because it took me about an hour a day to do the things I needed to do each day, the interaction, the engagement, all of that. And I basically used a lot of what I did the first time around, but because the first time went so well, I just basically repeated the process. I didn't really change anything. I just took what I did the first time. I changed around some of the emails, some of the order. I added testimonials from my founding members. That was the biggest part, is that I have founding members who have gotten results. And so when the second time came around, I had results to show.
Sure.
Whereas the first time it was like, I was basically selling them air. Like, join me in this program. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't have anything created, but I promise you it's going to be good. And then the second time it was like, it is good. I have people that have gotten results, and people are finding they actually have a brand. And so, that was really the only difference. Now, next time I launch it, I might do some more different things that I didn't do the first two times.
I suppose it does go to prove the point, though, for that to be your experience the second time around, it goes to show how much pre-work there was going into the first one.
Yes.
And again, I think it's, again, it comes back to the classic online myth of it's instant money for anything you want to do. And it just isn't like that. It takes work, and it takes dedication, and the planning and the plotting and the success path and the alliteration piece of your 5 stages and all those things. There's a huge amount that goes into all of this in the background to create the ease and flow that then comes subsequently.
Yeah. I mean, I started in March, so launched in June, and then again in August. So it was months of planning and preparing and creating different, sales pages and recreating the challenge that I had actually done that 2 years ago. Never did anything with it after I was done with it 2 years ago, but I always had this idea in my head. So I'm glad I finally pushed forward and did it, because I'm loving having this new type of client that I never got to work with before.
Yeah. And I think that's terrific, because it opens it up then to people, doesn't it, in a very different way. They feel engaged in the process because they are the process for what it's worth, and they're seeing that live for themselves, but they're getting the mentorship that goes with it, which is great. So my final question for you then around the whole design topic, before we dig into a couple of other things, before we close out today's show, the extension of all of this, the concept of a brand experience, where does that come? Where does it fit? When is the right time for you to think about creating a broader brand experience? Is it when you start thinking about workshops, retreats, public speaking? Where does it all kind of tie together? Where does it go?
I mean, to be honest, the brand experience is everything. It's from the very first connection that you have with somebody. When you get out there and you start posting in Facebook groups, even before you're selling something and you're just engaging with people and talking with people, you're creating an experience for them right there, because you are you're allowing them to figure out how you make them feel. Like, how did this conversation go? So the conversations that you have, not even on sales calls, that's a brand experience. And then taking it all the way past through the creation of your brand, crafting your brand identity, setting up your website, setting up all of those things, right? And then even my clients comment on the onboarding process is part of your brand experience. When they, I've got it set up so that everything is just smooth and easy. And I use 17 hats for that. I don't know if you use them, but
I have 17 hats.
They get their proposal, which is custom designed by me. And then once they accept that, they get a formal quote. And then, then they get their contract and they're like, oh my God, everything was just so smooth. And so it's really just creating a very streamlined process, putting your brand into everything, using the same brand voice in everything that you do, using the same words. And that's actually one of the lessons in Simple Brand Academy is, how do you figure out the words that you're going to use in your emails and on your website? So that's all part of your brand experience. And then of course, the events and the workshops, those are the brand experience
extensions.
But
there's so much other stuff that long before you get there.
Yeah, for sure.
Good stuff. Can you can you just round us off then? Next mood board challenge. When will that be live? When will that be up and running?
So I do them the second week of the month. So I start them on the second Monday of the month. I think that is the 10th, September 10th. I should know
so it'll
this.
Be next week.
Yeah. So you can sign up at moodboardchallenge.com, or you can go to brackenhousebranding.com and click on free challenge. It's right there.
Great, and we'll post those links in the replay video and so on that comes out with the show as well, of course. And then you're obviously, having just taken in your second tranche of people into your membership, I presume you're now in that sort of interim wait list place, are you?
Yeah.
Do you have a wait list up and running for the next round, whenever that happens to be?
There is a wait list, but what I've found is when people finish that mood board challenge, they want to know what's next. So
okay.
I may actually go from having a closed membership to opening it up every month for people as they come through the mood board challenge, because they're ready to go. They've got that mood board done, and now they want to know, okay, how do I keep going? How do I keep doing this? So yeah, so it might actually be opening up again.
That sounds like a great idea, because again, it keeps the flow going, and if you don't need people to be at exactly the same place when they join, or take everybody from the same place,
right.
It sounds good. Plus, they're in the flow, aren't they? They've completed the challenge. They've seen a result out of it.
Right.
At the end of the time, what is next? It is the next logical question, I guess, at that point.
Right.
So no, that sounds great. Okay, we'll get the links for all of those posted. So thank you very much for helping us with some branding knowledge today, and some great insight there about how you approach the process. And some great key tips in there as well, particularly for people starting out and those people who are evolving through the online world. Mm-hmm. As we come to round things off, I'd just like to ask you a couple of personal questions, if I can. It's very simple, this or that type stuff. And the first one I'm going to ask you is a design-oriented question. So, seeing as you mentioned about how you've used colouring and hues in your office to reflect some of your brand colours and so on, I'm going to ask you, do you prefer bold colours or pastel shades?
Pastel.
I have to say, I did wonder whether my appreciation of colour is correct. Looking at the wall behind you, that has that sort of very antique pastel-y kind of colour, although it's quite a strong colour.
It was this colour when we bought the house, so it was perfect. This was actually perfect. This office was the woman who owned this house was a massage therapist, and this was her massage room. So it's soothing, relaxing, which is similar to my brand. So I was like, oh, it's perfect. Yeah.
So I can see how these conversations typically go, certainly in my head, for husband and wife world. Yes, we must buy this house. Look, the upside is there's no decorating to do. Yeah.
Right.
Brilliant. Okay. Favorite thing about where you live?
The weather. For sure. The weather. Yeah. I mean, we have 4 seasons, but we don't have a horrible winter and we don't have a horrible summer. So we get everything here, and we don't have any, knock on wood, no like natural disasters, no hurricanes, no earthquake. You don't have any of that here. It's just perfect weather.
Okay. Favorite place you've ever traveled for work?
For work, Colorado.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. When I went on that Breckenridge retreat a few years ago. Yeah. I mean, I haven't traveled too much for work, but yeah, that was my favorite.
Yeah, nice. Would you pick food or drink?
Food.
There's just so much to choose from at that point, isn't there?
More options. No food. Food for sure.
So, on a night off without the boys, Mabel being looked after, would you prefer to go and see live music or go to a movie?
Music, for sure.
Yeah? Mm-hmm. Are you a big music person, like live music?
We are live music people, not necessarily new current music, but yeah, we try to get to as many shows as we can.
I have to say, live music is definitely one of my favourite things. It's that moment where you just get the rawness of a band in a pub or bar or whatever it might be, as much as the big stadium filler kind of stuff as well. There is something about it. Yes. So as part of the show, and as music is one of my most favorite things, one of the things that I'm doing is compiling a playlist on Spotify. So I'm asking all of my guests to come up with 3 songs, and I'll give you a little bit of a steer on what they need to be about.